The House will please come to order. See if I can get everybody out of the break room. If there's people in the break room. We're going to make a motion to accelerate, but if we don't have enough people, it's kind of a moot point. All right. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, so what this is a motion to accelerate to third reading. And so there'll be 3 bills that will be, the motion will be made. It takes a 2/3, there's a script, and it takes a 2/3 majority to accelerate them. If they're not accelerated, then they will fall back and be on third reading tomorrow. So that's how that'll work. So Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Rule Number 7-7, I move to suspend the rules requiring readings on 3 separate days so that the following bills may be immediately considered on third reading and final passage. House Bills 3, 4, and 45.
That motion seems to be in order. House Rule 7-7 allows for a motion to suspend the rules so the bills heard on second reading may also be considered on third reading on the same day. Does any member object to the inclusion of any of the bills listed? So you can pull a bill off just like the consent list. Nope. Yes. It'll just go to it'll be there just today. The motion is to suspend the rules so that the following bills may be immediately considered on third reading and final passage. House Bills 3, House Bill 4, and House Bill 45. The motion requires an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the elected members. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemande. Allemande. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clouston. Conrad. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haraldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez-Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Strzok. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Provenza, aye to no. Jennings, no to aye. Eklund, aye to no. Brown, aye to no. Further changes? Nyman? Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 45 aye, 17 no.
By your motion, you have moved to suspend the rules. We will now proceed to third reading and final passage on the bills with a separate roll call vote for each bill. The motion, okay. And so what these do, they'll roll to the bottom of third reading regular. So if you have an amendment, get it in. We'll do third reading consent first. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. We're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. Consent list. So we will not have a consent list. We'll run right into third reading regular. And so we are at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. A bunch of amendments. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 83. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 83, sponsored by Appropriations, Public Retirement, Actuarially Determined Contributions, and Act relating to public employees' retirement, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 83 having been read three separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass?
Chief Clerk.
Chief Clerk, when you're ready, please call the roll. House Bill 83.
Allemand? Allred? I'm sorry, Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Winter. Aye to no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 41 aye, 21 no.
House Bill 83, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 83 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 90. Reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 90, sponsored by Representative Rodriguez Williams. Newborn child safe havens, age of child, an act relating to children, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 90, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Warnock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers.
Aye.
Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 52 aye, 10 no.
House Bill 90, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 90 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 126. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 126, sponsored by Representative Yin. Child care is a residential use of property, an act relating to property, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have amendments. Representative Singh, third reading amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I respectfully withdraw third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 126.
All right. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 126 has been withdrawn. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 2. Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 126, and I ask for your favorable consideration. This amendment deletes the standing committee part of the standing committee amendment, which states, "and in which does not have any employees." During the summer, I had the opportunity to manage a cafe in the central part of town here, and part of one of the difficulties that I had with some of my employees was that they relied heavily on access to childcare, and when their childcare provider was, for whatever reason, unable to provide that service, either with they had a migraine or they had a personal injury, that child was, my employee then had to take care of that child in the situation. And so allowing these folks to have an employee to come in and help will increase the quality of service, the availability of this service. We live in a childcare desert, and I think this amendment will only help the situation. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
Representative Yin for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thanks. I'm neutral on it. I'm happy to explain why the committee put it in there, but I would say feel your conscience on it.
Representative Brown for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to urge a no vote. And I'm probably going to still vote no on the bill, but this really harms this bill even worse. When we start looking at private property rights, the question always goes, you know, where do your rights begin and where do your rights end and where do mine begin? And if I'm going to start having, we have no limit on the amount of employees, right? And we're only going to limit it to a certain amount of kids. I get that, but now I'm going to start having vehicles parking around my neighborhood, drive into my neighborhood. I've got no parking on the streets, but I'm going to have 1 or 2 employees potentially there to help take care of these kids. I don't know that I want this all the time happening, right? I'm running a business, a legitimate bona fide business in a residential neighborhood. And I think that we're in a position right now where we're starting to encroach on the rights of the property owners that have their rights, just so we can have some child care providers potentially. And I understand where we're coming from on the idea that we live in this child care desert. I get that. But that's what we have business opportunities for. That's the American dream, is to start a business. Not in my house, not next door where I have 6, 7, 8 kids running around next door to me when I moved into my house peacefully. Right? I have 7, 8 kids running around my house on either side of me because my HOA is silent on this issue. My private property rights are just as important as anybody else's, and right now what we're saying is those who want to start a business in their house now have statutorily drawn protections to start a childcare business. I think we're starting to encroach on a very serious issue here that we're going to start allowing just about any business. If we find a reason why do we have a desert in this area, it's a good idea to go ahead and allow it to happen in a residential neighborhood. So, on and against.
Representative Davis for your first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We may be entering dangerous area, but this isn't a one-size-fits-all. There's the rest of Wyoming, not just our urban areas. So if we let our local jurisdictions handle this in the permitting of these, I think we would be fine. Thank you.
Just remember to stay on the amendment if any of us know what the amendment is. Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for this amendment, we've already limited it to 10 people. The state has regulations on how many, what the ratios are of kids to adults. And if we're cutting it down to 10 people already, no business is gonna have 4 employees for 10 people. And so the number of cars hanging out at that daycare all day is likely not gonna change much. You're gonna have the owner of the daycare, 1 employee, and that may be it. You might have 1 employee, but as the instance was given, if somebody is sick and they're not allowed to have employees, then daycare closes, and guess what? That's 10 people that don't get to go to work that day. So, on and for.
Anybody else for their first time on the amendment? Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm curious how many employees you can have. I mean, if you're you could probably have 1 per 2 kids. So theoretically, you could have up to 10 or 15, so 6 or 7 employees at one residence. Is that correct?
Representative Western for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for, I mean, I feel in this body and in this institution, we tend to always think through all these hypotheticals, regardless of how realistic they actually are. I think with this amendment, let's just think through this practically. It's not like someone's going to pave a giant parking lot right in their residential neighborhood for, you know, the hundreds of employees that they have. Realistically, we're looking at scenarios where they have, like I said, maybe a dozen kids or so, and 1, maybe 2 people helping them out. I don't think it's a giant bridge to cross to say, hey, we just want to be able to allow these folks, if you're a 1099 employee, whatever that may be, you're only working a couple of days a week or you're working every day, 5 days a week, just to come over and help lighten the load of whoever's running this business. So I think it's pretty reasonable. On and for.
Representative Ottman on the amendment.
Thank you. Just to talk about the amendment for a second. First off, or thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, we looked at that in committee, and 1 through 10 was able to be, was legal for 1 person. And that was the thing. After 10 children, then you could be getting more. But that's where the business and the traffic and all that stuff started coming up. But your point of having a helper is so well taken, because any person that has a child knows that it's hard to get a shower, go to the bathroom, answer the phone, do laundry, do whatever with children running around. So to have that help. So we really do need to look at, and not to get off the amendment, but just to say what is residential. And that was the whole nexus, is to just make this, because about 15 years ago, the government got involved in babysitting, made everybody get licensed, and ran residential childcare out of business. So it is a big deal. I thank you for the amendment. But for the residential portion, it did say just 1, so.
Anybody else? Representative Zwanitzer Day for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So on the amendment, I would encourage a no vote. If you can have employees, then you have a business. And we're in residential areas, and especially when you're in HOAs, most people have moved into an HOA because they have extra income and they're looking for a quiet setting where people take care of snow removal, take care of lawns. And if you have employees, you have a business and you have an obligation to go into an area that is designated for businesses, not in a residential area. Please vote no.
Anybody else for their first time on third reading amendment number 2? Anybody for their second time for the sponsor? Representative Brown for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the last speaker said it pretty succinctly, but I think it's worth repeating yet again. We're talking about owning a business inside of a residential neighborhood where, if the bylaws of the HOA that I have bought into, knowing what I can and cannot do, are silent on a child care facility, the way that this bill would then go into play with this particular amendment now says that I can also hire employees to take care of this, and I can be run a bona fide business inside of a residential neighborhood. And so I immediately started thinking, when the last speaker was just talking, okay, well, there's a lot of people who run businesses inside their residential neighborhoods, right? I've got a home office. I don't have 10 cars coming in and out of my office or my neighborhood on a regular basis. I don't have traffic. I think we're going a step too far by encroaching on people's property rights when they buy into an HOA by dictating what an HOA can and cannot do, let alone by allowing them to say, now you can't stop me from owning a business. If I want to own a business and I want to have I want to be selling snow cones, and I need 3 or 4 people to go pick up bags of ice, and I need those bags of ice to be brought in on a regular basis, the HOA can't tell me no. Or can they? Oh, we don't have a snow cone business in my neighborhood.
On the amendment.
I'm on the amendment, Mr. Speaker. I'm talking about employees and the amount of employees that I need to hire. So if we're going to sit here and we're going to allow in the green books, keep in mind, we're talking about overriding what people can do with their private property rights now by the state law. I have a real serious problem with that. On and against.
Anybody else for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Singh for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I bring this amendment to help solve the problem that we have here in the state of Wyoming, that our people need access to affordable childcare. And if we can do something to, with this idea, ensure that this childcare is safe, that it's reliable, that it's high quality, I think we should be moving in that direction. The American dream was brought up. Starting a business is part of the American dream. This reinforces activity in the economy, not only with people being hired by this daycare, but also with allowing parents to be able to go to work. When parents are unable to go to work, our economy slows down. And so I ask for your favorable consideration on this amendment.
All right, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 126 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 126 has failed. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. All right, all those opposed, please rise. I get 29. What'd you get?
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Swanitzer Dan? Swanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Are there any Larson Lloyd? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 32 aye, 30 no.
Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 126 is passed. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 3, and that is Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 126. This is, might remember this from yesterday. I just think that if somebody's going to put a daycare in a neighborhood, that they should have to provide notice to their neighbors. Yesterday's amendment was for 60 days. Today's amendment is for 30 days. So I ask for your favorable vote. Thank you.
Representative Yin for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, I think the same concern that I had on second reading, I still have on third reading, which is that it would then unfairly treat a daycare compared to other businesses in places with HOAs that do not restrict commercial activity. So I think if it does move to the other side with this amendment, it's something that I would have to work on, but I would oppose it right now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else? Chairman Newsom, do you want another bite at the apple?
Sure. I just think you're being a good neighbor if you let people know. I think those HOAs that are silent on this, and if that community would rather not have daycares in their community, they can have an opportunity to change their HOA rules to prohibit this sort of activity. Or we were given an example in committee about a HOA that specifically allowed daycares in their HOA. So I think that you can give the opportunity for the members of the HOA to change their bylaws either way.
All right, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 126 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 3 has failed. The next amendment for our consideration is third reading amendment number 4. Representative Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move third reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 126 and ask for your favorable consideration. So, ladies and gentlemen, as there are literally hundreds of HOAs around the state of Wyoming that already exist, and a lot of those HOAs are of special nature, meaning that they're strictly for residential. They intentionally do not want businesses in there, any businesses, including daycare. And that's written into the covenants. But the way that this is couched, the argument can be, if the covenants say that it's a business and they don't allow a business, then, but they don't specifically say daycare, then all of a sudden, every one of those HOAs that are involved are going to have to find out about this law, are going to have to hire a lawyer, going to have to go in and change the covenants and redirect and basically put it all together again. And it's going to cost time and money and effort. But even more so, I think that there's a fundamental problem with this bill, and that is a covenant is a promise. It's a contract. So when you enter a contract, then you're bound by that contract. What this bill is attempting to do is say, it doesn't matter if you had a contract. We are going to redefine daycare so it fits on the other side of the contract instead of the side that it was intended, because we just think daycare is good. Well, what if it wasn't daycare? What if it was something else? What if it was senior care? What if it was, the width of streets? What if it was how high you can put a flagpole? You redefine it, and then all of a sudden, we, the legislature, are deciding, we're determining what you can and can't put in a private contract, and we're saying you can't do that. And if you do, we're going to override you because we're government. So what this amendment does is it says, look, this bill can only affect HOAs that are created after today and going forward, because you can't, it's an ipso facto law. You can't create a law and go back that's going to impact all of those covenants that were attached to the land, were contracts between two private citizens, and not having the government come in and tell you how you have to re-educate and how you have to reinterpret your agreement that's different than what your intent was. And so, to me, this is a simple thing. This is a common thing we put in the statutes. Is if we change the way the world turns, then we give people notice and we say it's only for the folks going forward. It's not for everybody else behind us. Just because we changed it, now a business is not a business. So because it's not a business, it doesn't apply to you anymore. Come on, folks. That's not how we do business.
Representative Yin, for your
Mr.
first
Speaker.
time.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against. I think this amendment would severely, severely limit the amount of possible daycare that we could actually incentivize with this bill. And I really truly think back to the bill that we passed in our last session, where the scenario was we have a couple of families in their neighborhood. They want to get together and have one family take care of them in their house, right? And you're saying that that bill that we passed pretty overwhelmingly, frankly, wouldn't be something that we wanted to happen in the neighborhoods because now we've called it commercial business. Childcare is different, right? And that was that discussion for the law that we have on the books now, that homes are used to raise children. Childcare is a residential use of property. So I would argue on and against the amendment, and aye on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ottman, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Surprisingly, I agree with the person back there that said no. What I will say is, as far as babysitting and childcare goes, I've been babysitting since I've been 12 years old. It's a wonderful thing. We did it for family, we did it for friends. But the thing is that where I see the problem is that in the law, if you have more than 2 children that are not your own to care for, you have to be licensed, first off. So what that did was that put a lot of restrictions on who could do childcare and who could not. The other thing is, and I have to agree, if you move into a place, in my opinion, and sign an HOA agreement, you give your word that that is where what you want everybody else to abide by, and you want to abide by that yourself. So what I see, or what I'm thinking, is that where the problem lies is saying that a person can do childcare in a home and make that in statute, and then put the parameters on there. I looked at Department of Family Services. They're working on rules for residential childcare, but a lot of that is where we got into the licensing. We have a situation in Du Bois where there was a woman that had a daycare business, was doing a very fine job, babysitting for a lot of children, a lot of teachers. Well, then COVID came. So everybody's home, so the teachers didn't need her anymore. She still had bills. She still had bills. So they ran her out. Now they only want her part-time. Now the school's thinking about that. So anyway, what I mean to say is that to make childcare in residences legal is where I think we need to go, period. If people want to work with an HOA, then they should go to the HOA, or go to your county, or go to your municipality, not to the state. So anyway, that's my take on it. I don't see where we have the jurisdiction to do this.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, to the good representative that brought this amendment, this makes it perfectly clear. I think this is an excellent idea. I think this is a good amendment, and I will vote aye.
Representative Ward for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind a speaker or two ago that this bill does not destroy covenants that explicitly state that childcare is not allowed. So if they want to make that the thing in the HOA, they can adopt a covenant that explicitly states that childcare is not allowed.
Anybody else for their first time? Second time? First time? Brown, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a common sense amendment, ladies and gentlemen. This really does, I mean, if anything, it makes it somewhat palatable. We're not going to go retroactive on people like myself who live in an HOA, and because my HOA is literally silent on this issue, because the people who are not paying attention to the Wyoming House of Representatives at 7:50 at night know that this bill is coming through. I think we're in a position now that we don't have to worry about those bylaws having to be rewritten and retaken over. This is just saying, hey, look, if you're going to do this from here on out, you have to notify, right? But we don't go and make this law. And again, I bring up to the body something that occurred in a very similar circumstance where we had a case up in the northwest part of this state that came in and said, hey, look, we don't want a private school being built in our town. And the private school came in and said, well, we'll just lobby and we'll just change the law. And so we changed the law. And we told that community, you have to build this. And we're doing the same thing with child care centers in residential neighborhoods. I don't want the government telling me, after I purchased into a homeowners association contract, telling me that I have to live with 3, 4, 5 daycares next door to me because my neighbor said they wanted to do it. I entered into a contract prior to this law coming into place, and so did my neighbors. Don't take that away from them. On and for.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Nicholas.
So I'd like to remind everybody that there is a United States Constitution that says that you can't impair contracts. And yet, if your covenants now say there shall be no businesses within your homeowner association, and this passes, then the issue isn't going to be necessarily what we define business to be. It's going to be whether or not it's a business under common law and how. So frankly, I think this is probably unlawful on its face, because we're saying that this is, if I'm selling shoes, but if we're going to bring in a law that says selling shoes is not a business. Well, does that mean it's not a business? And so, I mean, for all of you constitutionalists and all you folks that want to protect the fundamental right to contract, then I would say that you have to pass this amendment. It's just, and trust me, there will be lawsuits that flow, because I was in this business for a while, and I've drafted quite a few sets of covenants. And I would be happy to take up this type of a lawsuit.
Question being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 4 to House Bill 126 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Division. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 4, please stand. And stand still. "33, third reading amendment number 4 has passed. House Bill 126, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemande? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Aye. Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwan Dan? Zwan Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Crago? Closing vote. Vote closed. 45 aye, 17 no.
House Bill 126, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 126 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 3. Will the reading clerk please read the bill?
House Bill 3, sponsored by Revenue, property tax exemption for long-term homeowners. An act relating to taxation being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
All right, we have amendments. Third reading amendment number 1, Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you'll turn to page 2, you'll see that in the amendment, A on line 5 has been rewritten. And so let me just tell you quickly what that A says. It still has the 50% of the exemption on the assessed value. It still has 25 years in their house or paying residential taxes at 65 years of age. But what I did was put in a means test. In other words, the gross income for the applicants under 300% or less of the state median income for their spouse, and if the dependents are less than 21. So we're not trying to penalize those grandparents that are raising kids, and we're still trying to catch some kind of cutoff on that. So what does that mean? If you're 2 people living in the house, a double income is $60,000 a year, and if you're a single income living in the house, that's $43,750. And I can tell you monthly if you'd like, but I'll stand for questions. Got to move it. Hang on. Mr. Speaker, I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 3, or House Bill, yeah, it is 3, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the assist in the back row. Would anybody else like to speak on this amendment? Nope. Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and against the amendment. I think we leave it the way it was and give these people some relief. Thank you.
All right. All those, anybody else for the first time, second time? Sponsor, you good? Question being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 3 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 has passed. Division being called. All those in favor, please rise. I got 22, 23, 24. What's the yen? 3, 4, 5, 6. I still get 23. All right. All those opposed, please rise. More than 23. Third reading amendment number 1 has failed. All right. House Bill 3, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemande? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrup, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Swanser Dan, Swanser Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Henderson? No. To aye. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 59 aye, 3 no.
House Bill 3, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 3 is passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 4. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 4, sponsored by Revenue, Property Tax Refund Program, an act relating to property tax, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
There is an amendment. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 4. And so as we look at this property tax refund program, I heard from my treasurer that, you know, there were people that were maybe suspect a little bit on the list of whether they should have been getting a refund, but no mechanism to really check anything. So what this amendment does basically is in G, the Department of Audit shall periodically conduct a random review of distributed property tax refunds to ensure that recipients of the refunds under the property tax refund program are in compliance with the requirements of this paragraph. So just not anything onerous, just try to figure out some kind of audit check.
Discussion. Representative Byron.
Thank you, Chairman. On and for, folks, back at home, I also had some discussions with those who were administering this program, and there was definitely some suspect things going on. So I think this is a great way to put an audit, keep people honest, and get this to people that need it. Again, on and for.
Further discussion for your first time? Seeing none. Second time before the speaker? Seeing none. Chief Clerk. Oh, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Amendment 1 is passed. Seeing no further amendments, Chief Clerk, if you'd call the roll on House Bill 4.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Harrelton? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanzer Dan? Zwanzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 62 aye.
House Bill 4, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 4 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 45. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 45, sponsored by Representative Crago. Property tax exemption, residential structures, an act relating to taxation, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Third reading amendment number 1, Representative Yin.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 45 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, this is like the same amendment that you saw a couple hours ago. Again, I just want to push a little bit back for your favorable consideration. We're not necessarily sure what will happen to our counties or towns or local fire districts. And I know many of your counties are on the maximum number of mills. I just want us to make sure that we do the right thing, and then we can come back in 3 years and vote again for property tax relief. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Crago, all right. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 45 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 has failed. Division being called. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1, please rise. I get 26. 26. All those opposed, please rise. $34. All right. I get 26 to 34. So third reading amendment number 1 has failed. Third reading amendment number 2, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 45. And this amendment is fairly simple. I'm just adjusting the 5% rate down to 4%. So I just wanted to kind of see if we could push that down just a little bit and see if we could get to a percentage that gave some people, again, just a little bit more reform in terms of their ongoing, as I mentioned to everybody in this body before. The thing I don't like about 5%, now I realize it's a cap, but the thing I don't like about 5%, when you get into a 5% rhythm, remember every 14 and a half years, that means your property taxes double. That means in the lifetime of a mortgage, you're looking at 4 times property tax. That's why I don't like that number. I like to push that down a little bit and get on a glide path that's a little bit healthier for people and something that that's more predictable and acceptable. Again, I ask for your favorable consideration. I ask for your aye vote on this amendment.
Representative Crago for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would urge a no vote on the amendment. And I think the first thing we got to point out is this bill does not guarantee that your taxes are going to go up 5%. It's not an automatic increase of 5%. It's a cap. And so it might, if it went up 5% every year, the good sponsor is correct. But that's not the case. Your taxes might go down. They might go up by 1%. They might go up by 2% the next year. They might go down the next year. This should just have an annual year-to-year cap, and we need to keep that in mind. And so I'd ask you to resist the amendment and keep it at the amount that's the percent that's in the bill. Thank you.
Chairman Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said before on this bill, had the people in my district had their taxes go up only 5% over the last few years, I'd never gotten a phone call from them. 5% is not an unreasonable level, and it, again, is the top, not the guarantee.
Representative Slagle for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think earlier today, we debated the amount of rise in the COA. I think it was around 3 to 3.5%. I guess I would kind of compare that to what we're looking at here. So I think 4% might be a reasonable deal. I would vote aye on this. Also, I would call for the, according to 12-4, call for a recorded vote.
Got the seconds, Chief? Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, on and opposed to the amendment. So I think it's important to, first of all, look at history. If you go from 2000 to 2019, the average price property values went up on average over that period of time of 3.6% yearly. And that's actually remarkable. But if you go back the prior 20 years, you were averaging more between 4.5% to 5.5%. It's situational. It depends on, and if you take the late 70s and into the 80s, that's, it went up basically 15% in about 3 years in a row. So when you put a cap on, you have to make sure that the cap isn't regressive and basically impedes the values of your property and your ability to sell. And I mean, so it has the opposite effect. What you want, but really 5% is a good cap number. In fact, it probably is a little bit too low because it's going to have to eventually catch up with itself if you have 3 years of inflation at 6%. So, and we all will suffer, somebody suffers through that one way or another if that happens. So 5% is plenty.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer? Representative Craigo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to leave everybody with one thing, and that is this is just one part of the solution. Again, we are not going to get everything we want in one bill. If we try to do that, we're going to fail. That's what happened last year. I ask you to resist the amendment. Let's keep this bill moving forward. Let's get the rest of the bills out of here and work on them too. Thank you.
Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just wanted to again say, I'd ask for your aye vote, and I understand it's a small change, that kind of thing, a little bit of help, just throwing it out there. Again, I'd ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Chief Clerk, please call the roll on third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 45.
Allemand? Aye. Allred? No. Andrew? Aye. Angelos? Banks? No. Bear? Aye. Berger? No. Brown? No. Burkhart? No. Byron? No. Chadwick? No. Chestick? No. Clauston? No. Conrad? No. Craigo? No. Davis? No. Eklund? No. Haroldson? Aye. Harshman? No. Heiner? Aye. Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? I'm sorry. Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stiff? Storer? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanzer Dan? Zwanzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 24 aye, 38 no.
Third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 45 has failed. Third reading amendment number 3, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading number 3 to House Bill 45. And this amendment, basically what we're doing here, currently the bill as the bringer of the bill has brought before you guys and given you good details on this. Obviously, the residential building is in the first phase. That's immediately this year. And then in 2025, there was addition of the land. And what this does is it adds in 2025 with the land, it basically, the wording is, beginning in tax year 2025, single-family residential structure shall include the associated improved land and other structures associated with the residential structure, including garages, sheds, and other outbuildings. So the goal here was just there was some, I wouldn't say confusion, there was some discussion on whether outbuildings would be included. So this was just to bring that in 2025. Now, the critical thing here is, as the bringer has mentioned, we need to move that out to make sure this is not complex, not difficult to implement. So, and I believe this was very implementable. So I'll ask for your aye vote on this and your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a good amendment. Please vote aye. It's a good addition to the bill, and we might have to work on a little nomenclature after we send it down the hall, but it's a good amendment. Please vote aye.
Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder to the body what we're trying to do here. We're trying to provide tax relief for people. We're not trying to provide tax relief for horses or tractors or guest houses or any of those other outbuildings that in some cases can be quite valuable. We are just trying to address the fact that people need to be able to stay in their homes. I ask you for no on the amendment.
Anybody else for the first time? Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, again, urge your support for the amendment. It was really a nice amendment, and I think, and people pay those taxes on all those outbuildings, and it just keeps that rate of growth at a cap. That's what we're trying to do. So urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Anybody else for your first time? Second time? You good, Representative Locke? Question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I just request your aye vote on this. I think this takes care of, is moving in the right direction of taking care of our people. Thank you.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 45 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 3 has passed. House Bill 45 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemande? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwaniter Dan? Zwaniter Dave? Speaker Summers? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye.
All right, House Bill 45 having been read 3 separate times. House Bill 45 has passed the House. That's not quite the right one, but it'll work. House Bill 45 has passed the House. Mr. Majority, so just, ladies and gentlemen, we're kind of checking to see what maybe the other end of the hall and how they're going to handle the calendar. And so, stay tuned. It's my intent to go to something like 10:30, but if they choose to, if the other body chooses to do general file tomorrow and change the calendar, then I will consider that as well. And so, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, let's do her to her.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And one thing, just to give you all an update, I'm actively working on the general file list. So just so you know, I'm going to try to move all the property tax bills to the top and the committee bills to try to get that work done through the first part of this here. So the way the thing is set, we're going to start with the first 3, and then I will be changing them. So keep an eye on the calendar to try to get the tax bills moved up and the other committee bills. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Chairman Oakley.
The Committee of the Whole will please come to order. All right, let's get to work. Check. We are starting with Resolution 3. The first bill for our consideration is House Joint Resolution 3. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Joint Resolution 3, sponsored by Representative Larson JT, support for local input and federal rulemaking. A joint resolution in support of meaningful state and local government involvement in drafting proposed federal rules. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom is referred to House Joint 3, support for local input and federal rulemaking, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Tarver, Western. Excused, Representative Lawley. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Burkhart?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, to do so with a recommendation that House Joint Resolution 3 do pass. And I further move the adoption of the standing committee amendment, I think. And the good representative from the land of Sweet Waters will handle the bill. It's his.
All right, Representative, are you going to talk about the standing committee amendment first?
Madam Chairwoman, yes, since Chairman Burkhart has moved that amendment,
Okay.
I'll explain that at this
Go ahead.
time. Members, this is just some corrections in language. On page 3, on page 2 after line 16, we just wanted to make sure that we added that the BLM may propose future resource management plans and environmental impact statements that negatively affect Wyoming. So we just added that as a clause. And then on page 3, line 1, we just changed the word has to had because they had, the federal government has withdrawn the natural asset company's proposed rulemaking. And then we changed just the word similar to other on page 3, line 6. So if there's no questions, I'll call for the question.
You've heard the motion on the standing committee amendment number 1. Question having been called, all those in favor of that standing committee amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. The standing committee amendment number 1 has been adopted. Oh, anybody opposed? Say no. Now it is passed. It's been a while. You'll have to forgive me. So we're back on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. At this time, I'll also move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 and ask for your favorable consideration, or to House Joint 3, and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, page 2, line 15, we are just correcting a spelling error. Sorry to my friends in Uintah County, there was a spelling error there, so figured we'd get that fixed. And then we just also wanted to make sure that this resolution was passed on to some other people that are relevant to the specific actions that we've mentioned in the resolution. So we added the language, the Director of Bureau of Land Management, the Director of the Department of Interior, the Secretary of the United States Department of Agriculture, the Chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. So if there's no questions on that amendment, I'll call for the question.
Question being called. All those in favor of the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, say aye. Opposed, no. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has been adopted. Back on the bill.
Madam Chairwoman, if anyone has any questions on the bill, I'd be happy to answer them. But I feel like we've had enough discussion over the previous times. So at this time, I'll call for the question as well.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Burkhart's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Joint Resolution 3 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. House Joint Resolution 3 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 104, correct? 104. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 104 is sponsored by Water, Omnibus Water Bill Planning, an act relating to water development projects. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 104 Omnibus Water Bill Planning. Let me back up. Mr. Speaker, Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 104 Omnibus Water Planning. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Alleman, Allred, Banks, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Slagle, Winter. Representative Eklund, Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom, Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom it was re-referred House Bill 104 Omnibus Water Bill Planning, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Eklund?
Madam Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 104 do pass. And a privilege I'd like to take ahead of time. I've served on this Select Water Committee for about 14 years. I'm not on it right now. And the way it works is a commission helps us with all of this, and they help the office with it as well. And in the 14 years that I've been doing it, I don't think there's a single community that hasn't been positively affected by what we do in Wyoming by developing water. And with that, I'll turn over the explanation of the bill from my good friend who has a beautiful view of the mountains.
Representative Conrad.
Chairman, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we spoke about, one of the most valuable resources, natural resources that we have is our water. This effort, through a great deal of committee meetings with a multitude of stakeholders, really enhances, but more importantly, preserves the water we have and also actually captures more for the future. If you'll just let me take just a minute. I want to read through 48 pages of water. No, let's just skip it. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been through this before. This impacts every community that we have, and I'd appreciate your favorable vote. If there's questions, please seek me out, but this really does positively impact almost every community and every county in this state. So with brevity, I will conclude that. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Eklund's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 104 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 104 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 166. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 166, sponsored by Representative Clouston. Education Savings Account 1, an act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 166, Education Savings Account 1. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Andrew, Brown, Clouston, Pauley, Northrup. Noes, Representatives Berger, Obermuller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 166, Education Savings Account 1, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do amend and do pass fail. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Stith. Noes, Representatives Nicholas, Sherwood, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Northrup?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when a Committee of the Whole rises to report, do so with the recommendation that House Bill Number 166 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee amendments. And I will explain the first Standing Committee amendment that came from Education. We added on page 3, line 20, that kindergarten means an educational program with the primary goal of preparing children for kindergarten that provides up to 1 year of school of education prior to entry into kindergarten. The rest of that's just conforming language all the way down until you get to line 17 of the amendment where it says science, and after that it says insert pre-kindergarten, ensure ESA students are minimum receive education necessary for a preparation to enter kindergarten. And that's the Standing Committee amendment from Education. I call the question.
Question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 has been adopted. Back on the bill.
And thank you, Madam Chairman. With the explanation of the bill is the good representative from the Land of Camels.
Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you once again House Bill 166. This is the ESA bill that we passed last week with 51 aye votes. As you remember, this ESI idea has been heavily studied in this body and by the committees. Let me be clear, this is nothing against our Wyoming public education. I'm very proud of our education system. In fact, in 2022, our NAEP scores, known as the Nation Scorecard, Wyoming ranked 4th in the nation and the very best of all of our western states. What this bill does do, though, is it funds families that are looking for another choice besides public education. The funding can be used towards tuition, a computer, education software. You can use it to take an ACT test or attend a CTE class or band at a local school. You can use this money to transport a special needs child to their medical appointments. As compared to the original bill, this bill, we made 2 large changes. We took the 3-year-olds out of the pre-kindergarten qualification, and we put in a tier system so more families in Wyoming would have more choices. We heard in committee that our education committee is in favor of this bill, and they are ready to implement it in a studied and practical manner. The department has been reaching out to other states that have ESA programs, getting their advice on how we can make a program fit for Wyoming. Yesterday, committee number 2 heavily amended this bill, and then in a 4-3 vote recommended it do not pass. I take some responsibility for this unfavorable outcome. The committee had 9 bills to look at in an hour, so we rushed the presentation. I should have spent more time explaining how important this bill is to so many families and students in Wyoming. Please vote yes for this bill. Vote to fund Wyoming families and give these families some of the education choices they've been asking for. Thank you.
So are we calling for the question on the standing committee amendment number 2? You're presenting that? Okay. Representative Walters?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At this time, I'd like to move standing committee amendment number 2 to House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration. So what this is doing, friends, if we go into page 27, which is really the funding portion of this bill, and this is the standing committee amendment that came from your committee number 2, the Appropriations Committee. And so on page 27, down in section 3, setting up these savings accounts, there was $40 million set aside from the general fund. That's a heck of an amount of money. So what we have done is we reduced that to $5 million, and then we switched the funding source from general fund to school foundation funds. We thought if this is for education, it ought to come out of the education account. So that's the first thing we've done. The next thing we've done is they had asked for 2 positions to get this program up and running. We thought, we don't know how big this program will be right off the bat. They shouldn't need 2 positions from the start, so reduce that 2 positions down to 1 position. On page 28, we reduced the funding in half, the $480,000 down to $240,000, and again, changed the funding source from general fund to school foundation program account dollars. And so that's and then on page 28, line 18, again, we changed the funding source from general fund to school foundation dollars. Again, just because this is education side of the world, and so we want to be funding education with education dollars. And so that was what the committee number 2 did, is change the funding source and then reduce those amounts slightly. And so ask for your favorable consideration.
Discussion on the amendment. Representative Lawley?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I urge a no vote on Standing Committee Amendment number 2. We worked together as a committee all throughout the interim, and one of the things we were doing in that process was trying to manage concerns about those in public education concerning instability in public education because of the ESA. And so some of the funding approach tried to respond to that. The funding numbers were numbers that we took testimony on during the interim. And so again, I just would encourage you to vote no on the Standing Committee Amendment number 2.
Representative Andrew?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would also urge a no vote on this amendment. I think that unfortunately what it does is it makes the bill unconstitutional, because if we use the funds from the school foundation program account, some of the funds that tip into that are from the school lands. And therefore, when you mix all that in, it makes it an unconstitutional source of funds for this program.
Representative Claston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too strongly urge a no vote. The amendment changes really take the heart out of this bill, and I feel probably make it unconstitutional as well.
Representative Craigo?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and against the amendment as well. I think the first thing the amendment does is create a competition between private and non-private schools, which I don't think we need to do. I think we can do both, and I think we can do both well, so I'd ask for a no vote.
Representative Larson?
My question on the constitutionality, how is it any less constitutional with general funds than it is SFP?
Representative Walters?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the point about the competition and whatnot, this is a brand-new program, and starting a brand-new program with this much money is just kind of overly aspirational, I think. We don't know how many folks will take advantage of this. We can always fund it more next year, but starting out as though this program's been running for 30 years and we have a cost estimate and we know how many people will use it, $40 million is a heck of a lot of money, friends, and I just don't think that we need to start the program where we think it may finish in a few years. So we start with a smaller amount, we start with a lower number of positions, and we grow the program gradually. As to the question about making it unconstitutional by spending SFP dollars, there's federal mineral royalties that go into the SFP, and those can be separated out. We've done it many times in the past where we have swapped the educational dollars for general fund dollars by using the FMR portion of the educational dollars for other activities, and it's absolutely constitutional, totally legal. So by using these SFP dollars, we can use that portion that comes in on the revenue side to fund this. So it's absolutely constitutional to do this. We're just saying this is the account it comes from, but once they're coming from that side of the account, we can show where the revenue stream was and how those are not constitutionally protected as coming from the state land. So this doesn't change the constitutionality of it. All this amendment does is it just simply says, hey, we're going to start a program, a nifty new program. And we'll just see how it goes from there, but we can always increase the funding in the future. I just think it's irresponsible to start with the funding at such a high level in its initial phases. So again, on and for the amendment, please, let's get this started, but let's get this started at a small incremental pace. Thank you, friends.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Chairman Nicholas?
Thank you. And you know, the presentation to us made a lot of sense. And the presentation was that the folks that went to the interim studies and explanations of this project says the best way to do these programs is to start slow, start small, make sure that it works right and that it's operating correctly, and it's something that you control as it grows. And so, frankly, it's still an awful lot of money to get it off the ground in 1 year, and so on in favor.
Further discussion? Chairman Northrup?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree. We need to start slow. We need to start at some amount of money that's not humongously extravagant, and then work our way up into it, kind of piecemeal this thing out until we get our hands wet.
Question having been called, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 2, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Standing Committee Amendment Number 2 has failed. Division having been called, all those in favor, please stand. Those opposed, sit down. Those opposed, please stand. Thank you. Standing Committee Amendment number 2 has failed. We are back on the bill. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole number 1 to 166 and shall explain. It says delete shall. If you look on page 19, it starts out on line 22, shall with number 11, XI. But if you go clear back to the very start of that section, which is on page 15, 21 to 906, right underneath that, it says the State Superintendent of Public Instruction shall. And so we're telling it shall. And so let's delete one of the shalls. Thank you.
Question having been called. All those in favor of the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has been adopted. Back on the bill, Representative Kriga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I withdraw Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 166.
Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 having been withdrawn. Back on the bill, Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 3 to House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, this is just a little bit of a fix. An important part of this bill comes from something that we learned from West Virginia, which is one of the first states to pass a universal ESA program. When they passed the ESA program, one group that was not happy with it after passage was the homeschoolers. And so this amendment is what they used to fix that and make it so that everyone was happy with it. Some groups of homeschoolers want to be able to use an ESA, and other groups do not want to use the ESA because it's very important to them to protect the homeschool statute. And what a homeschool statute does is it fulfills the compulsory attendance requirement, but having an ESA also fulfills the compulsory attendance requirement and allows you to be part of a home-based education program. So this is really great because essentially the traditional homeschoolers get to remain traditional homeschoolers under the original statute, and the homeschoolers who want to use an ESA can use an ESA for whatever purpose they would like. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Further discussion? Chairman Northrup.
Thank you. So when we were discussing this in committee, one of the homeschool people came in and said, you know, we really like this bill, but we'll never use it except for in a few little instances because we want to be homeschoolers. We just don't use this money. Thank you.
Further discussion? Question having been called. All those in favor of committee, oh, I'm sorry. We're going to try to speed this up. Sorry about that. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and for the amendment, received quite a bit of emails in support of this concept. And I know that this body has shown favorable consideration in the past through past legislation in support of homeschool families. So I urge and I vote.
Further discussion on the amendment? Question having been called. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 3 say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 3 has been adopted. Back on the bill. Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 4 to House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, this is just another quick fix. I think sometimes when we learn from other states, we end up with a little bit of extra wordy language that isn't necessarily needed in our statutes. And this is something that the homeschoolers brought to us, where we differentiate in the bill a high school degree from someone who has a high school degree from someone who has graduated from a homeschool program. We do not differentiate those two things in Wyoming statute. And because of that, we just want to delete home-based education program. The bill does the exact same thing, but removes some language that is particularly concerning to that group. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Question having been called, all those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 4, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Enthusiastic. The Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 4 has been adopted. Back on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 5 to House Bill 166 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, this is along the same lines of the other two amendments, but this one pertains to the private schools and helps protect the autonomy and religious freedom of our private schools in Wyoming. It adds a line that says an education service provider shall not be required to alter its creed, practices, and mission policy or curriculum to accept payments authorized by a parent from an ESA. Please vote aye. Thank you.
Discussion, Mr. Speaker?
Madam Chairman, thank you. So I guess I have a question on this. So in the bill, there's a requirement to have a certain types of coursework, math, science, all of that. So is this provision in this amendment going to be in conflict with that? And because curriculum is not the same as coursework, I mean, like the bigger subjects. So just assure me that when you say curriculum, you're not going to try to put a provision in that's going to be in conflict with the rest of the bill.
Representative Andrew.
Madam Chairwoman, I do not believe that that would be an issue whatsoever, because elsewhere in the bill, we require that the education service providers teach the basic subject areas that are already required of private schools to teach and of even homeschoolers. Thank you.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So just to speak to this and on this, this is just keeping the government out of Christian schools saying, well, you know what, we're going to put guidelines on what you can and cannot say, what you can and cannot teach. So this is protecting in that realm, and definitely something that we need to have in there. I believe this is definitely an excellent idea for protection of Christian and private schools.
Chairman Nicholas.
So on and against the amendment, ladies and gentlemen. So it can be contradictory depending on what your creed, practice, admission policy, or curriculum is. So if it happens to be different than the ones that is otherwise set out in the rest of the statute, then they're in conflict. So that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it's so broad and so general that it can mean anything it wants to mean, and that whoever's that individual homeschooler or that person wants to do. So on and against.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is going to keep the government out of Christian schools. It's also going to keep the government out of the Satanic Temple schools and other bodies that maybe your taxpayers don't want your money to go to. My taxpayers don't want to spend their public funds to go to schools where maybe they're learning that mule deer aren't the mix of white-tailed deer and black-tailed deer. They came off of an ark. That's not what my taxpayer dollars want to go to.
Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. If you scroll to page 9, line 21, one of the requirements of an ESA of a student who has an ESA is that the ESA student receives instruction in, at a minimum, reading, writing, mathematics, civics, history, literature, and science. Thank you.
Further discussion? Question having been called, all those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 5, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Committee of the Whole Amendment 5 has been adopted. We're back on, did somebody call division? Okay. Okay. We are back on the bill. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I respectfully withdraw amendment number 6.
Committee of the Whole Amendment number 6 has been withdrawn. Further discussion on the bill. Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The passage of amendment number 5 brings up a real issue, doesn't it? Worried about how government might interfere in our church schools in the future, so we put in the statute that they can't do that. And of course, you know all about statutes, right? They're temporary. It provides zero protection for future years in your churches. This can be taken out just as fast as it was put in. There's a school that, a parochial school that resides east of here and a little south. It's a parochial school that was founded in 1892, 2 years after we became a state. It's still there today, thriving. My wife went to that school in the 1950s and 1960s. And her 3 siblings went to that school. They all went 8 years, all 8 years of that school program. They came from a poor family and they went there on scholarships. And they weren't government scholarships, they were scholarships provided by the church itself. So those were days when churches supported their own missions and didn't think about turning to the government for any help. My father was the pastor of that church in the late 1960s and 70s, so as a topic, you would think I would be on the side of this bill and supporting it, but I'm not. What I learned in a lifetime of being inside the church is how a church like the one I just described has depended on the separation of church and state and the protections of the Wyoming Constitution to maintain its respectful distance from government and remain self-reliant. The wall of separation between church and state, that wall that we just haven't talked about much and people don't want to talk about much, but that wall of separation of church and state is an integral part of that church's understanding of its mission, to be in the world, but not of the world, to avoid entanglements that might compromise its independence, to know that today's political winds which blow in their favor could blow them over tomorrow, to know that separation is defined by what happens 100 years from now, that it's a long game, fought one day at a time, that separation. The written mission of that church today on their website speaks volumes to this deliberation tonight. According to their mission statement, the central purpose of this school, the central purpose of that school, is to teach children about the saving work of Christ from the catechism written by its 16th century founder, Their document thanks the generous support of the members of the congregation, which makes it all possible. 132 years. If this bill passes, they may very well need to amend their document to include a thank you to the paternal state of Wyoming. What government pays for, people stop paying for. What government pays for, people stop paying for. It's human nature. This bill has the potential to totally mess up that school to the southeast of the capital. We'll be standing up competitors in the capital city. How many denominations will feel obligated to access the money in Cheyenne and elsewhere? For sure, the large churches in Cheyenne and Casper with facility capacity will end up with the lion's share of the money. No question about that. See, this bill doesn't deal with the issue of facilities, does it? So the large churches, the wealthy churches, are going to be the ones that can build the facilities to draw in the kids. This bill is an example of when helping hurts. When you diminish individual incentives and corporate responsibility from the church, that hurts. I fear that the school to the southeast will have no choice but for the first time in 132 years, take state money, compelled to make a choice between staying competitive and protecting their autonomy. That really hurts. When the buildings have been built, the staff has grown, and with the dependence on government assured, the loss of autonomy for all the church schools around the state, that will really hurt. This bill acknowledges the idea of a wall of separation and gives that wall a name. That name is an education savings account. This wall is strong, we are told. This wall is impenetrable and will foster new flowers of growth in many denominations around the state, absent any future interference from the benefactor, the state. How can education savings accounts be a wall of separation when its purpose and function is to breach the wall of separation? When the wall is designed to accommodate the transfer of money to meet a political objective to increase competition by standing up parochial schools. In 133 years, all of the history of Wyoming as a state, churches with privately funded school facilities and privately funded scholarship programs for low-income families have thrived. Are we going to be the legislature that walks away from that history? Today I stand in the breach to protect the church from the encroachment of government. One denomination testified in favor of this bill in committee, and in that case I stand to protect them from themselves and any church that is seeking help to save their schools. The state cannot help what is clearly a spiritual issue. Our current system is the best, excellent, exceptional public education versus wonderful, inspired parochial schools like the one southeast of here. Public versus private. It has worked for 133 years in the state of Wyoming. True competition. Let's keep it that way, and may the best schools win. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Chestic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have more of a question than a comment, although I may turn it into a comment. My concern is that the last amendment that we just adopted, I wonder to what extent that weakens the role of the superintendent of public education in looking over the curriculum. Under section Romanet 6 on page 3, a qualified school, these funds can be spent on any qualified school certified by the state superintendent of public instruction. And I understand, and I am not an expert in education. I'm not on that committee, but I assume that the state superintendent of education has some role in making sure that the curriculum that is being delivered is appropriate and accurate. We don't want to have history classes that teach things that are just incorrect. But does the amendment that we just passed, which says that the school does not have to change its creed, does that weaken the ability of the superintendent of schools to make sure that the curriculum that is being delivered at these qualified schools is appropriate curriculum? That's more of a question, but also, as you can understand, I'm probably going to vote against this bill.
Representative Clouston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In part of the bill, there's money set aside for the superintendent to work with certified vendors. 24 other states are already implementing ESAs. So she has the ability to work with these vendors in these other states looking at that curriculum. I really, really appreciate my desk neighbor here from the middle of the state, his comments. I'm a product of private school and public school, and really felt some heartstrings as you talked. But I do want to make it clear that we are not funding schools. We're funding families. We're giving them some choices that they're asking for and opening up some options, and a lot of this money is set aside for people with less income. And as you have less income, you actually have less choices in life. This bill gives those families more choices. I encourage an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Northrup's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 166 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. House Bill 166 has passed committee of the whole. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you. Those opposed, please stand. Thank you. House Bill 166 has passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor, did somebody say something? Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairman, I move the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Motion carries.
Reading clerk will read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Joint 3, do pass amended. House Bill 104, do pass. House Bill 166, do pass amended. Representative Oakley, Chairman.
Chairman Oakley.
I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Chairman Oakley. Do we have any messages from the Senate? Nope. Do we have any reports from standing committees? Nope. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I think we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand adjourned until tomorrow, 10 a.m., the Friday, the 23rd of February, 2024.
Committee announcements, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee number 10, Labor, Health, Social Services, will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. in our usual room E3 to hear House Bill 3 and House Bill 4 that both deal with emergency medical technicians.
Chairman Eklund, could somebody come here and sit in this chair for a second? Harshman, come here, get in the chair.
At ease, friends. While we're waiting, we'll do some committee announcements while everyone's paying attention. Be listening. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your House appropriations will meet at noon recess, right after lunch, for the legislative feed bill and Senate file, which is Senate File 2 engrossed, and Senate File 47.
Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 1 will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to consider one bill, Senate File 30, engrossed.
Any other committee announcements? So, ladies and gentlemen, there's some sad news out there if you're getting the feed. 3 UW swim team members were killed in a crash north of Fort Collins on 287 this afternoon. So as you do your prayers now and later, just think of those folks and their families and how many young people that highway has taken from us over the course of time. So anyway, give them your prayers. With that, you've heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. We stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Friday, February 23rd, 2024.